Presentation 3. I've picked to go over Bessie Coleman, Queen Bess. She was born in Atlanta, Texas in 1892. Her exact birth date was January 26th. She had 12 brothers and sisters. There was 13 children running around that house. She was born to, her mother was an African American, and her father was a mix of Native American and African American. Now, her parents split up in 1901. Doesn't say that it was like a bad divorce. It was he went to Oklahoma to get away from discrimination, and she stayed in Texas with all 13 children, from what I can tell. In Waxahachie, Texas. She took one semester at Langston University and then had to drop out because she could not afford tuition after the first semester. And eventually she moved to Chicago and lived with her brothers, who were then deployed during World War One. And when they came back, they told her all these stories of airplanes, and she really wanted to fly, so she sent out a bunch of applications and got turned down because she was an African American woman. That sucks. So she did the 100% sensible thing, and thing I would have done too if that had been my dream at the time and I'd been told no. She learned French and went to France to get her pilot's license. And when she came back, she became one of the most outspoken people at the time for African American rights. Refused to speak anywhere that there was segregation or discrimination for a time. I think for the whole time. And she was the first African American woman to do like public flight demonstrations and loop-de-loops and figure eights. It says making the shape of an 8 in an airplane. Figure eights. She became really popular in both the United States and Europe during this time, and she was winning. I mean, that's the best way to describe it. She was winning, and then she wasn't. In 1923, her airplane stopped working, and she had her first major crash, and just top to bottom hurt. Didn't stop her. 2 years later, she was back in it, performing her air tricks once more. I say in 1925, yeah. And was able to buy her own plane, which was part of her dream. But, yeah, and then she went back to her hometown in Texas and was able to demand that her performance have one unsegregated entrance, which, as far as I can tell, was unprecedented for the time. And then, unfortunately, on April 30th, 1926, Queen Bess took her last flight as a passenger on a test flight with a mechanic named William Wills. He lost control of the plane and it flipped upside down, and she was not wearing her seatbelt. And she fell because airplanes didn't have roofs at the time. She just fell. Didn't work out well for him either. He never got control of the plane, and he also did not make it off that flight. But she's someone that has continuously been remembered. There's never been a period where she like faded, and then we rediscovered her, and she's still honored by the aviation community. Aviation clubs are named after her all the time. The Challenger Pilots Association of Chicago have a tradition of flying over her grave every year. And just this year, the American Women Quarters program, they did a quarter of Bessie Coleman. Yeah.